welcome back to the SwimSwam Breakdown. As always, I'm your host, Coleman Hodges, coming to you from Brooklyn, New York, joined by my fellow New Yorker, Sophie Kaufman, and the swim scribe himself, David Clossy from St. Cloud, Minnesota. Thank you guys for coming back on such short notice, but after all, it is our last breakdown. We wrapped up the regular season for this 2024-2025 college year. And now we are going right into conference championships. This episode, we will be breaking down the SEC and ACC championships, which is no small feat. These are both 4.5-day meets. These are far and away the two deepest conferences in NCAA swimming. So we've got our work cut out for us. So let's dive right into it. We're going to start with the SEC, who will be seeing all the normal, dominant, crazy fast teams, as well as the Texas Longhorns this year. So just first off, how do you see Texas's addition to the SEC Conference Championship specifically affecting this meet, be it the energy, the outcome, or the individual swims themselves? David, I'm tossing this one to you first.
Yeah, I think this impact, I was actually just thinking just now is that, with all the conference realignment that's been happening and stuff like that, it's kind of all happening this season. But this was like the first change that was going to be in motion. Texas, the SEC for a while is kind of to get it kind of caught up with everything that happened with the Pac-12 and stuff like that, all culminated and followed it. So this is like kind of, we're ready for this one for a while. But I think that this, especially with all, changes with Texas, with Bowman going there, is going to be, I think, make the meet even more dynamic. I've always liked the SEC as a conference championship. That's one's always been really exciting, especially as they stretch that meet out a little bit more. And I think with what we've been seeing Texas do in the regular season, bringing that energy, and we've seen what Bowman's been able to do with a fast in-season team already at ASU. They're able to, go fast in the season, dial it up, then dial it up again. And I think, as we talked a lot on the last breakdown about how that kind of mindset has shifted overall. I think that is going to continue into conference championships. I think a lot of teams are going to be ready to go fast as ever and kind of hit the ground running because they've been used to swimming fast in season. They don't need to, if some individual swimmers might kind of take a session, the first prelim session, right, might need to take a little bit longer to get going. It's like, oh yeah, this is what it feels like to be moving. I kind of forgot about it after midseason. And I also think that it's going to make those prelim sessions that much more cutthroat, because when you add a team as deep and as fast as Texas on both the men's and women's sides, the threshold to make, an A final or even a final, depending on where you're sitting as a swimmer, is going to be that much more fierce. And it's going to really show like the teams that are able to show up in the morning when maybe you're still feeling a little bit sluggish on day one, day two, before you get into your rhythm for it, that are able to show up and hit the ground running. That's going to be fantastic training as well for the teams that are going to need to turn around and do that at NCAAs, because a lot of times, NCAA team titles or just like high placements can be won or lost on your preliminary session. So I think that impact's going to be really good for the depth and that prelims. And then in the finals, when it comes to racing, when you add some of those top times, nation leading times, you're going to have, again, for both men and women for Texas, that's going to make those battles at the end that much more fierce.
Absolutely. And I like the point that you brought up, or it made me think of something that, again, we've seen Bob Bowman at ASU swim fast all season. And I believe the first team to suit up for an entire college season was Mizzou. I remember talking to Andy Grievers and reporting that. I don't remember the year. I think it was pre-pandemic. I want to say 2018 or 19.
That sounds right.
However, I will say as a whole, I think the SEC as a conference, it's obviously southeastern part of the country. I think things move a little slower there. You have a slower pace of life there. And I think those teams, for the most part, have kind of been the slowest to adopt this new mentality. We see top teams like Florida and Georgia still putting up relatively mediocre times in season. We see them not suiting up a fair amount, maybe even as much as they are suiting up within within the regular season. So I think it will be very interesting to see. You have this new look Texas team with Bob Bowman, been swimming fast, been swimming exceptionally fast all season. And then you have these other teams, which are high caliber teams, but again, they've kind of been doing it the way they have been doing it. And I think for a lot of these teams, the traditional target is SECs. So I think it'll be really interesting to see that matchup of, okay, we've been swimming fast all season, and this is our first time at SEC Championships. So they may not even know. Certainly, the athletes don't know what to expect, at least a little bit. And then you have all of these other teams who know how to do SECs, know what this meet is about, and have that as a focal point of the season. So I think that seeing that juxtaposition and seeing how that all shakes out will be really interesting. With that, Sophie, I'm going to throw it to you. Any thoughts on this new addition for Texas in the SEC?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what's been said, and it's really interesting to think about, like you were saying, Coleman, these teams, they know how to show up for this meet, the ones that have been there before. And even though, the Florida men have had a pretty dominant grip on the conference for the better part of the last decade, and the women are going for a three-peat this year, this is a really competitive conference all the way down the standings. The battle for second and third is still really intense. On the men's side, you've got Auburn jumping into the mix in the last couple of years in a way that they hadn't been so present for the last couple of seasons. Tennessee, Georgia, even Texas A&M, they're all kind of always right there. And on the women's side, it's been a lot of risers and fallers. Kentucky won this 3 years ago. They're not as competitive for the team title anymore, but Tennessee is certainly still right there. So having a high energy team like Texas that has been swimming so fast all season is going to only up the intensity at what is already a very intense meet, which is really exciting. You hope when that kind of mission happens that it's just going to bring out the best in everybody, right? Texas, I think, at least from my opinion, is the favorite on both sides of the meet, but you hope that for the other teams that want to win this team title, they're going to want to meet that challenge head on. They're not going to just hand this meet to Texas. They want to win too, and hopefully that raises the level of swimming from an already pretty high level to something that's really special to see.
Yeah, and I would think that going off what you just said, I would think some of these teams who aren't Texas maybe even feel like they have somewhat of a home court advantage over Texas. It's like, well, they on paper they might be a better team, but it's like we know this meet, we know what it's like, we know how to navigate it, because it's not just okay. Again, athletes aren't robots. You're not just going out and swimming and going to go the time that you have done already in season or go faster than that time. SECs, many athletes in the SEC will say SECs is their favorite meet over NCAAs, over any college dual meet. It is their favorite because it is the most intense. It is a combined team meet. And it is unique in that it's 4.5 days. So you're really locked in for the better part of a week to this intense team battle where fans get loud, they get rowdy. I mean, it is truly unique to any meet or competition that I've ever been to. And yeah, I'm really curious to see. I think Texas already knows how to do that. Their fans are going to fit right into the SEC. I have no doubt about that. But it will be really fun to see how some of these athletes react to a meet environment like that, where it's not only intense and loud and crazy, but you have to sustain it for 4.5 days. So on that note, let's get into some event previews. The first event that I would like to highlight is the women's 500 free, because man, this is going to be a barn burner. And the depth, we talked about depth of both of these conferences. And it's not only the tippity top end, but as it currently stands, 14 women in the SEC are under 440 this year, like going into the meet. But they are only from 4 teams. We've got 2 from Tennessee, 2 of the 14, and then the rest are Georgia, Texas, and Florida. So between those 3 teams, it is just going to be an all-out knockout bloodbath. Jillian Cox is the top seed, 430.6. Bella Sims right behind her, 431.0. Rachel Steggy is third at 434.2. But again, all 3 of these schools, Texas, Florida, and Georgia, have such deep distance programs or such deep mid-distance programs where the 500 free is kind of a middle ground for so many of their athletes, that I think, the A final, we could potentially see it, especially as David mentioned earlier. Prelims, it could take 435 to make the A final at a conference championships. So that is one that I'm very excited about. Sophie, I'll throw it to you. Any thoughts on the women's 500 free or anything that you're excited to see?
Yeah, I'm very excited for the women's 500 free. The 500 free is one of my favorite events to watch in a college format meet. And this one has the makings of something really exciting, and it's the first individual event of the meet. So hopefully it's a really high point to start out on. At midseason, I think Bella swam her 431 first at the Georgia Fall Invite, and then like an hour later, Jillian Cox went 430 at Texas, and those were both such great swims for both of them. It's a lifetime best for Jillian Cox. It's not a best for Bella, but it was certainly the fastest she's been in a couple of years, faster than she went at NCAA's last year. So it was a really encouraging swim to see from her, especially after, a disappointing summer where she didn't make the Olympic team. So I think that battle between them is something that should be really fun to watch. But then Rachel Steggy is sitting right there at 434. She's been 432, best time. So she's going to certainly be in the mix as well. And like you were saying, Coleman, this is just such a deep event for so many of these schools, that getting it's going to, whoever can get the most of their distance or mid-distance group into this A final is going to have a lot to cheer about right away, from that first event on the first day.
I mean, we talked about momentum yesterday, right? Like, talk about setting the tone right off the bat, right? David, any thoughts on this race?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard one thing is, remember back when the women's 500 free was a slower event?
Remember when 436 won NC2As
Yeah,
in the
and now
last
we're
3
like,
years?
Man, that might be in the middle of the A final at a conference meet. Yeah, it's such a, and I believe you were even calling this, like, with some of at the time, with some of the younger up and comers at that time, with like, once they enter the NCAA, this is going to get crazy. And now it's crazy. And one thing that stands out to me in particular with this is that we're kind of seeing, I think there's obviously so many, the 500 free is such a dynamic race. 500 free or 400 free in meters is always one of my favorites to watch from a pure racing perspective, because there's a lot more room to be kind of tactical, and you can, you have enough distance where you're able to kind of play with your pacing a bit more, but everything stays kind of closer together as compared to once you get out to the longer distances. So I think it's a really exciting and dynamic middle ground for that mid distance, just like battling. Is that at the Eddie Reese Showdown, we saw a battle between Jillian Cox and Katie Grimes. And now we're going to see the other half of that, where Jillian Cox is now going to go up against defending NCAA champion Bella Sims. And then in March, we have all 3 of them and potential spoiler candidates as well. If those 3 are locked in a battle and you have someone on an outside lane that's making a move that none of them can see, this is just going to keep foreshadowing what I think is going to be an awesome race. And I think that also one of my top events in general is the men's 500 free in particular as well, because I think that is going to be a super exciting race for a lot of the same reasons. First and foremost, everyone is going to be looking at what Rex Maurer is going to be able to do after popping that 404 at midseason. Once you do a swim like that, everyone's going to be on the lookout for, can you match that? Can you go faster? But then the depth in this, just kind of like the women's, a handful of schools that are so good in this mid-distance discipline. Texas, in addition to having that, they have David Johnston, they have Kobe Kurros, and they have Luke Hobson. Luke Hobson is sitting at 7th right now. He went a 4.12 at midseason, normally pretty sluggish in midseason. But the fact that Luke Hobson is at 7th at the conference level right now is crazy. You're going to have Jake McGahee from Georgia. And the fact that there's not even any Florida swimmers seated in the top 8 right now because of how Florida typically paces their season. And they're so good as a school at midseason. So like the rankings are already looking super stacked right now in that men's 500 free. And you can expect some Gators to be moving up. And it brings back to what I was saying before about prelims being a battle, is that, you kind of have trying to fight for a final spot in such a strategic race like the 500 free can be pretty brutal, because if you're too locked in on the race that's happening in the pool, you may have, crushed that field, and none of them saw you coming on the final 100, or you got out to such a big lead, or at the start, or attack the middle, but then it's like, oh, but that was like 2 seconds slower than I should have been. I'm in the B final. So it's kind of balancing that is going to be another skill that is going to be really tested by those swimmers.
Yeah, like looking at these both men's and women's 500 frees, I'm seeing like David Johnston, Olympian, Luke Hobson, Olympian, like Bella Sims, Olympian. Like the amount of Olympians, and I'm not even exceedingly well versed with like Charlie Hawk, who's Australian. I think he might be an Olympian, but that could be wrong. But the amount of Olympians, U.S. national teamers, and just international stars in both of these fields, and again, that speaks to just the depth of the SEC. Like you're going to have so many decorated athletes going head to head, which again, I think just ups the ante and makes it all the more exciting for this. Sophie, any thoughts on the men's 500?
Yeah,
free?
I mean, I think that this is going to be another really exciting race. We're talking about so many big name athletes. Someone that I'm looking at to kind of play potential spoiler in this field is Georgia's Tomasz Koski, and I probably said that wrong, but he's developed really well at Georgia this season already. He's gone lifetime bests 131.7. 411.96 at midseason. He had a really good breakout at the postseason last year as certainly an underclassman and I think a freshman, and he's just continued to get better and better. Jake McGahee is the big Georgia mid-distance name, and he's been such a consistent force in the 500 free in the NCAA for so long. But when you're looking at who's kind of coming up behind him for Georgia, that's somebody that I'm keeping an eye on, who maybe doesn't have the longest list of accolades kind of coming into this meet, but talking about, anything can happen in prelims, is somebody who could contribute to a bigger name missing out on the championship final.
Yeah, if you feel like this name is familiar, Tomas has a brother, Matthias, who swam for Georgia from 2012 to 2016 and was an NCAA champion for Georgia in 2015 in the mile. He was a 2-time Finnish Olympian. And I believe Tomas, who I want to say is around 10 years younger than Matthias. So there was like a big age gap. I remember seeing Tomas Koski on Georgia's roster and being like, isn't that like, why do I know this name? And so there's definitely an age gap there, which was confusing to me, but they are both yeah, apparently Georgia has this family dialed in because Matthias had a ton of success at Georgia. And now we're seeing, as Sophie said, Tomas just blossoming as an athlete at the very top of the NCAA. So very excited about that. Another Olympian in this field, Jake Mitchell, is seated 15th right now. And once again, Florida, I think more than any team, knows how to do this meet and knows how to swim fast at this meet. We talked about it on the last breakdown. They typically pretty much go all in for this meet. Like they go really fast at SECs, then they go really fast again at NCAAs. And Jake Mitchell, it's his last season as a Gator, last season in the NCAA. So I'm guessing he might move up at least a couple spots from his 416.0 seed right now. Let's keep the good times rolling. I'm going to highlight the men's 100 fly next because, again, we mentioned this event, but the fact that you have Luca Orlando, Jordan Crooks, and Josh Liendo potentially all going head to head in this event is nutso to me because I think any of those three have a chance at breaking Caleb Dressel's NCAA record in that event at this meet. And like, not only does one man have a chance, but saying three men have a chance to do that feels sacrilegious to me. This event, and we don't know if Jordan Crooks is going to pick this or the 200 free like he did last year. But as it stands now, Orlando's been 43.6, Crooks has been 43.7, Hubert Koch 44.0, and then Liendo's fourth seed at 44.6. Kyle Peck, who we talked about last episode, is fifth seed at 44.7. 5 guys already under 45 seconds. And we have 15 men under 46 seconds. So not that the rest of the field isn't going to be very exciting and provide a very deep field, but I think this top end is just too good and have too many accolades between them to ignore. David, thought anything to contribute for this men's 100 fly?
I mean, you said it so well, but it's just with how many, we don't know what Crooks is going to do even if he chooses the 200 free. I think the battle between Luca and Josh Liendo is going to be an exciting one because Luca's already been incredibly fast this season, and Liendo is the second fastest performer in history. He's been the closest to cracking that Dressel mark ever with I think he was 43.07 at last year's NCAA. So he's chasing that. I remember I always think about this whenever Liendo pops like a crazy fast time in a Dressel event. I remember when like a SwimSwam article came out like right before his freshman year saying that his goal is to break a Dressel record. And so many commenters were just trashing him. Like, how dare he have goals? How dare he have ambitious goals? And I was like, man, I'm rooting for him to do it in one event just because of that now, especially with how close he's gotten. And in particular, those 100 distances and the 100 fly and 100 free.
Yeah, he got so close last year.
And that's the thing is that I feel like the last 2 years we've had real contenders between Josh and Jordan Crooks to like break these Dressel records. Now we have Luca, and it's like, oh, we're so close. And I think this is a testament to Caleb, right? To how dominant he was and how his records have continued to stand the test of time, even though you have these thoroughbreds like really going at it and just knocking on the door, but not quite there. Question for both of you: any chance Luca swims the 100 back over the 100 fly?
Certainly a chance.
Likely. I mean, it's so hard. I think there is always a chance, but like he can, if he wants the 100 back, like it is there for him to swim on the medley relay. Though if you're gaming out Georgia's relays, it might make most sense to have him on the butterfly leg, especially with how fast he's been in butterfly this season. So and we saw him break Ryan Murphy's UGA pool record in the 200 back last month now. So his backstroke is clearly feeling good as well. So who knows? I mean, maybe there is a better chance than we think that he'll make that choice.
I'm going to say I thought about it a little bit more. I think he's going to stick with the 100 fly for the reasoning, less of a decision, in terms of trying, really crunching the absolute possible, potential for points on each, because it might only be a swing of a few points, right? For, when all shakes out, might not be like a massive pendulum swing one way or the other. But I think, when kind of looking ahead, if he's obviously is made the Olympic team last summer, trying to get into the further and further up into the rankings on the international stage, what better way to use this NCAA season as a tool for testing your ability to race against the best than going into a loaded event like that 100 fly. So rather than, I think he's going to not want to shy away from, oh man, I'm maybe more of a lock to be able to do something in that, because he doesn't contest backstroke events long course. He sticks with just the butterflies there. And so I think he's looking to further his skills being able to compete on that international stage than being able to compete against the very best, even at the conference level in such a fast conference. And then again, at NCAAs, I think that might be the route he goes.
I'm with you. It doesn't make sense to me from a team perspective to have him swim the 100 back, because Georgia does have more depth in the backstroke events than the butterfly. In the butterfly, it's kind of him. And that, in terms of SEC scoring, he's the main guy who's going to score in butterfly. I will say, because of the event schedule at SECs, I do think there's a chance he goes 100 fly, 200 back, because those are all on different days. And currently in the SEC, he's ranked 5th in the 200 IM. One of the people ahead of him is Rex Maurer, who I'm guessing will not swim the 200 IM. So let's say he's ranked 4th in that. In the 200 back, he's ranked 3rd. Will Modglin and Hubert Koch are ahead of him in both the 200 back and the 200 IM. So I will. It seems like he has a slightly better chance to me at winning the 200 back versus the 200 IM. And that could totally be wrong, but we've seen his backstroke be so on, especially this season. And it could just be hey, you're not going to get another chance to swim a good 200 back because you're definitely not swimming it at NCAAs. So why not go for it here? You're already in the 200 IM. So I feel like there's a better chance of that happening in my mind than him not swimming the 100 fly and swimming the 100 back.
Looking at that time that gets him in that 3rd seed in the 200 back as well, that was done at the start of the season in a dual meet against Emory, compared to Koch's best is at the Texas versus Indiana meet, which is well documented, very fast. And then top seed right now in SEC is the Will Modglin from midseason. So, because we were talking at the very start, right? Georgia's with Florida in terms of, less high intensity in the regular season, less likely. I don't know how likely that was a suited swim for his 138.1 against Emory. I think it was their season opener. Unless it was, what can you do? Here, throw on a suit for this race.
He didn't go 138.1 without a suit. I'm sure we could look at and see. I'm sure there was an article that said it.
Yeah, or at the very least, I think Georgia's actually pretty good about posting race video on their team YouTube channel. Just look. But still, in terms of, the timing of the season and, obviously not resting for one of your first dual meets or anything like that, but just the relative intensity of the meet where you're gonna be doing that, because Texas versus Indiana and midseason, that's a different level, gonna bring out a different level of competition. So that's another factor to consider when you're thinking about, what could he potentially do further on in the season at SECs.
Absolutely. Sophie, any event specifically that you would like to highlight for the SEC Championships?
Well, while we're talking about event lineups, which it seems like we've gone into, I'm really interested in what Josh Liendo is going to do. Coleman, I know he spoke to you, I think, before the start of the season and was like, yeah, I might do a 200 IM or a 200 fly and like see what happens this season. And turns out he's pretty good at the 200 fly. Now he's, I think, swum it maybe twice and he's 139. He's second in the conference this season behind only Orlando. Meanwhile, he hasn't raced the 100 freestyle this season except for the season opener against Virginia, or at least that's when his season best. That's his season best, which is a converted time from short course meters. He's almost definitely done the 100 free at some point, but it's really been interesting to see him take that event on in the 200 fly. And even if he doesn't swim it at this meet, I'm interested to see how it maybe helps him on the back end of his 100 fly, as he's presumably aiming for Dressel's record.
That is super interesting. Obviously, the fans would love to see a Josh Liendo 200 fly at SECs, especially if he's going up against Luca. Just think of the memes.
I do want to say, by the way, I was super wrong on that. The meet they came from, they swam against Emory 10 days ago. I was thinking of another team that did them as a season opener because I just saw the name and then I looked in the date. So if you left your comment that I was very wrong, I'm aware. He was also suited. I went and found the video. That's why I'm like, they just uploaded these not that long ago. Oh, this is on February 1st.
Okay, nice.
So yeah.
So
I was super mistaken on that one. Suited and recently. So you take that point and throw it in the garbage.
So going back to the Liendo event lineup, I wish conference championships could be like dual meets where people can like switch their events or switch their events mid meet or like the day before. Because maybe they can. Maybe that is the case because I know it's not for NCAAs. You have to enter your 3 events and like that's it.
I think you might be able to over enter and then scratch out. That might be totally wrong.
That sounds right to me. And working under that assumption, it would be really, I really hope, and this seems like such a Florida thing to do, that they enter Josh Liendo in the 200 fly and the 100 free, whether he's going to swim both or not, just so we can be guessing and not really know what he's going to do, because that could also be like a team race thing, right? Like he has a better chance at winning the 100 free than the 200 fly. But if the team race doesn't end up being as tight as maybe we think it will be, it doesn't end up being tight one way or the other, maybe they're like, all right, you're swimming the 200 fly. I don't know. It'd be fun though. We will see. All right. I think that's good on SEC. If you want more event previews, just head to SwimSwam. We're going to have plenty in the next few days. But let's turn our focus now to the ACC, where once again we will see new team additions. This time, I think it's even more of an impact because we have 4 exceedingly high-level teams in both the Cal and Stanford men and women. Sophie, I'm going to throw this one to you first. Just the impact of having these 2 Pac-12 powerhouses enter the ACC. Well as SMU.
I was going to say, we can't forget about SMU. I mean, I think it's a really similar story to seeing what it's going to be like for Texas to come into the SEC. These are 2 top 10 programs in the NCAA, all 4 for Cal, Stanford men and women. And they are going to certainly make their presence known in a really big way at this meet. I think in terms of the team race, maybe a little bit more prominently on the men's side in terms of the fight for the team title. Virginia seems well on their way to rolling through for another ACC championship on the way to NCAAs. But still, the Cal and Stanford women like presence will affect battles all the way down the score sheet. And so I think that just in terms of like the energy that they're going to bring as well and the competition level, it's just going similar to Texas arriving at the SEC. It's just going to raise everybody up. And like we were talking about with prelims in the SEC, that's also going to be true now at the ACC championships as well. This is another 4.5-day meet. I think they've extended. So, and it's just going to be, even more about keeping that energy up for a long time. And it'll be really interesting to see how the former Pac-12 teams respond to this length of meet, because I don't believe that Pac-12's was the 4.5-day meet. They stuck with the traditional championship schedule. So it'll be really interesting to see how their athletes who are used to, the returning athletes who are used to that kind of championships handle another day tacked on.
Let's see.
Sorry about that. Yeah, absolutely. I think it'll be. I love that the ACC went with the SEC format of now it's a combined meet. It's 4.5 days. I am assuming Big 12 was combined and 3.5 days. I'm not sure if they're keeping that format, but it's a combined meet no matter what. I really think Big 10 needs to get on board. They're now the only Power 4 conference that is not combined, and there's 2 separate meets and 2 separate weekends. And first and foremost, I just think that sounds kind of miserable for the coaches. And I'm sure every coach has their own preference of like, oh, I like it separated, I like it combined, but like, and for us, for like the people covering it, just make it one meet. That's all I'm saying. It's just easier, and then you get it out of the way and whatever. But I do really like that the ACC is now a combined meet so that you just have all the action in one weekend, which I really enjoy. David, throwing it to you, thoughts on these new ACC additions and how that might affect the championships themselves?
Actually, first on the subject of combined meets, another benefit of that too is that I think it's better for the athletes as well, whichever one is second. So when I swam at St. Cloud State, which is a Division II school, and the conference of the school is in the Northern Sun Conference, all the other teams only have women's programs. So we never swam at that conference because we would win every year, and it would be another inter-squad meet at the end of the season. As fun as that would be, not the best. So we were always in different conferences, separate, removed from the school for the last my sophomore year. And then to this day, we're in the GLIAC conference for just our men's team, which is actually a combined conference. But all the time, I think they've actually flipped the dates now, but all the time I was swimming, we were the second week. It was the Northern Sun Conference Championships. And then our coaches would go with the women's. They'd leave like an assistant behind to run like the end of our taper practices. Mm-hmm. And then coach would come back, and then we'd leave like maybe with a day in between. Sometimes he's like, all right, I just got back, get on the bus, I'm taking a nap. Because all that travel time, like you said, for the coach is exhausting. And then it was a little annoying sometimes too. At the end of your taper, you pretty much know what you're doing, but like sometimes it's even nice to have a little bit more ability to have some more feedback. But we would also get some days like after our travel day and stuff like that. She's like, I was really dialing it in. But just, that's another benefit, because there's benefits at the competition for the coaches in between competitions. And then also I want to have it just like for the athletes in between competitions. To the ACC with the additions like that, I think it's interesting how like for the women at the top end, not really much going to change. It's still Virginia in there. There's going to be those battles for like extra points. I think it's going to be really interesting, but it's like, I feel like the additions is a lot more for the depth and the teams that are fighting for, second, third, fourth and stuff like that. Whereas on the men's side, you're going to have some challengers for the title, which I think is going to be super exciting.
Yeah. No, I think both meets get a lot more interesting. So both women's and men's sides get a lot more interesting with this. If anyone feels like arguing over, well, NCAA's is separate, so conferences should be separate, I'm also of the mindset that NCAA's should be combined. So that's where I stand on that. But that's a whole different podcast. in terms of ACCs, let's dive into some specific events. First off, I want to highlight the women's 100 fly, which I think is going to be, depending on what Gretchen Walsh decides to swim, could be an absolute barn burner. If Gretchen Walsh swims the 100 fly, obviously no contest there for the top athlete, but we've now got Tori Husk in the mix. You've got Claire Curzan, who's at Virginia. You've got freshman Leah Shackley at NC State, who's been tearing it up this year. Julia Oliveira Carvalho, I am seeing, is 5th in the ACC from the University of Miami at 51.0. And then you've got a pair of Louisville athletes in Gabby Albiero and Ella Welch, who have really been the anchors of the sprint core for Louisville for the past 3 or 4 years. And they've just gotten in so many A finals and scored so many points for the Cardinals during their time there. Down at 13th, you've also got freshman Erica Peliez, also from NC State, who's been having a sensational season. Not sure if she'll swim this over the 200 free, but she could also make some noise. But you've got 3 women who have been under 50, 4 women who have been under 51 seconds. And I think those top 5 to 7 athletes could make this a very exciting race. Either of you, anything you want to add about the women's 100 fly or any event you're looking particularly forward to? Sophie, I'll throw this one to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the women's 100 fly is one of the most exciting events on the women's side of ACCs, kind of regardless of whether Gretchen is there or not. You know, if she is, like, that's great and it's exciting. But even if she goes another direction with her event lineup, like, this is still such an exciting event to watch for so many different reasons. There are so many athletes who have been so fast already this season that, you know, the thought of, okay, well, now they'll have tapered at least a little bit for this meet, like what could happen, and to get to see, you know, Tori and Claire go head to head in this race is something that will be really exciting. So even if Gretchen does swim and is a body length ahead of everybody, the race for second, third, fourth, that's still going to be really exciting. And I think it is really exciting to see, you know, Carvalho did make the B final in this event last year at NCAA's. So it's exciting to see her kind of coming up and being a factor being a factor in this potential A final. You know, Miami is having one of the best seasons that they've had in a long time. And I think that that's something about this conference meet that's really exciting. Like on the women's side, like, yes, you know, Virginia kind of it's very clearly in control of this meet. And you're kind of wondering, okay, well, you know, how are Stanford, Louisville, and Cal going to kind of fall out with each other, and NC State as well. But then you've also got teams like Miami and UNC, especially, who are having really strong seasons, kind of get to go to work. And like, that's going to fly a little bit under the radar, but it's still like exciting to see them get to kind of, after such a good regular season, start to put those pieces together in a championship format.
One thing I did not have on my swimming bingo card, the Tori Husk and Claire Curzan rivalry from 2021 being rekindled at the 2025 ACC Championships. Like, there's so many things that had to happen. Like, because again, 4 years ago at Olympic trials, like Claire Curzan and Tori Husk are heading into Olympic trials. Like, that was kind of a marquee matchup, right? Where Tori had come to a TAC Titans meet in May of 2021. And like, her and Claire had raced in the 50 free, the 100 fly, the 100 free. And they were like these two premier sprinters heading into the Tokyo trials. And then you have Claire going to Stanford, Claire then leaving Stanford to go to Virginia, then Stanford going to the ACC. So it's like, there's so many things have happened. And now it's like, oh, we're going to get to see these two like potentially go head to head in multiple events again. That's nuts. And it certainly won't be a marquee rivalry like it was 4 years ago, but that's something I just realized, and something I didn't expect to see, certainly, so many years later. But Sophie, I'll throw it back to you. What's one event that you are looking forward to at this ACC Championships?
I'm really looking forward to the women's 50 free. Again, you've kind of got Gretchen way out in front of everybody, but even leaving aside the really exciting possibilities of what is she going to do next in this event, you've still got a really competitive field. That's a really important precursor for what the NCAA championship field could look like. Last year, the ACC had 7 of the 8 NCAA A finalists. The year before that, it was 6 out of 8. So this is an important event.
And they just got Cal and Stanford.
Yes, and they've gotten better. So you've got Gretchen out there, but then Claire has been playing with the 50 free this season on that first day. Mary Ombre Mola from Cal is a freshman who just seems to get better and better every time she swims. She broke the Cal 100 backstroke school record at midseason. She just went another lifetime best in the 50 free 21.5.
Which Cal has had at least 2 or 3, Cal has had a lot of good female 100 backstrokers, like at least 3 or 4 Olympians in the 100 back. And she just comes in gone.
Yeah. And it's crazy. So I'm really looking forward to seeing her swim her entire event lineup, but especially in the 50 free, it seems like she's still, she's been improving, but it still seems like she hasn't really gotten close to what she's capable of dropping. So I'm really looking forward to that, and then you've got the Louisville sprint crew, who have been so consistent in that event for so many years that once, similar to the 100 fly, right? Like you might end up with Gretchen winning by a second, maybe, but the people who are coming after her are still going to put down some exciting swims and be competitive with each other. So I'm looking forward to
that. Okay, just a fun question, throwing it out there. Give me a number, and I'll go first. Percentage chance you think Gretchen Walsh swims the 50 free at ACCs? And I'm just saying this for fun and for a couple reasons. We've seen UVA athletes swim off events, certainly at ACCs, and fans have been begging to see a Gretchen Walsh 200 IM and 500 free. I don't think there's a high percentage chance we see her swim the 5 free, but how cool would it be if Gretchen Walsh swam a 200 IM at her final ACCs and really gave the people what they want? I'm going 80-20. She swims the 50 free. I don't think it's a 0% chance. I think she could pop off. I mean, we already know she's been 152 in the 200 IM. I mean, I don't think it's ridiculous to say she could go under 150, and maybe we get another Walsh v. Walsh duel, which would be epic. But she probably swims the 50 free. But I think it's 80-20. I think DeSorbo might throw us fans a bone in this one. But David, give me a number.
Oh, I want her to swim at least one off event so badly, just because I love it when swimmers do that at their conference championships. And hey, last time we're talking about, Gretchen versus Dressel in terms of the greatest yard swim ever. Dressel knew what the fans wanted.
This is a legacy meet.
And the one breast, his final SEC. So if we're comparing, that might be the route to go for the 200 IM. I'm going to inflate the numbers because I want it to happen so badly. So I'm going to say 50-50. It happens or it doesn't.
The flip of a coin. It seals our fate. Sophie, what do you think?
I'd probably put it at 90-10. Not to be the pessimist of the group. I mean, I don't think there's a 0% chance, but Gretchen, first and foremost, is a sprinter. And I think that if I'm choosing between, is she going to lead off the 800 freestyle relay and we're going to get another 200 free, or to see her do a 200 IM, like, I don't know. I don't think that she's going to do both. I think that it's going to kind of be one or the other, but I could be wrong. But if I had to pick, I would rather see her take another shot at the 200 free record. So.
Okay, well, I'm with you there. Yeah, that's fine. Mumble. Okay, fine. I will one. This is true. Yeah, to piggyback off of David's thing. This is a legacy moment for Gretchen Walsh. I mean, truly, this could put her over the top of Caleb and Leon if she just ponies up and swims an off event, or 2 or 3. Hey, but I will. One funny note that's completely unrelated. The practice I filmed with the Texas men a couple weeks ago, it was an aerobic practice. Rex Maurer, Luke Hobson, Carson Foster, Kobe Carrozza were all like lined up side by side, going head to head in this like fairly low stakes practice. And at one point, I don't think this made it on camera, but Kobe Carrozza looked around and was like, "This is a legacy practice." Like, which, it's like, it will be on SwimSwam. People will be watching it for years to come. It's like,
there's no low stakes when you show up with your camera.
It was very, I don't know how accurate it was, but it was very funny to hear, and it tickled me. So, but seriously, this is a legacy meet for Gretchen Walsh. She could really end the argument at this one. It's like, I don't know. It seems like it would be easier for her to put herself at number 1 solidly if she swam off events at this meet versus if she broke her current records more. Like, it seems like she would have to it'd be harder to break them more to solidify her place as greatest all time versus just like breaking an NCAA record in a 200. But that's my take. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that.
I think that's accurate specifically in terms of like what she can do at this meet, because I think my assumption is that, if she's going to go for her primary 3 at NCAA, so that can be where she breaks them more and goes a 46 or something, just does something stupid.
Not impossible.
Yeah. It wasn't really sarcastic when I said it. Was like, maybe.
Wait,
more projecting than
She's
anything
been
else.
47
manifesting.
Low. I mean,
like for that would be the time for that. Whereas, I wouldn't expect that, if she does do a primary 3 and, if she goes 3 personal best, then the bar is set at, then she's going to go even faster at NCAAs would be the expectation that would place on her in terms of the legacy. Whereas, so I think anything she would do in those events has a potential to be kind of overshadowed, other than being another entry on the top 10 list of an event that she dominates. Whereas if you break a record in an off event, you weren't on there or you were way lower. And now you're either at the top or in the top 3 or whatever you can do. So it's kind of more unique opportunity to do something when talking about legacy that'll stand up on your resume of swimming accomplishments.
Agreed. Yeah. On that note, David, an event you would like to highlight or preview for this ACC Championships?
I'm gonna go with the men's 1650 because I'm always partial to distance races. So I got to highlight something distance related, as well as just the fact that I think this is going to be a cool moment for an interesting battle, because right now we got Lucas Henvo sitting up top with a titanic 1429 from that Cal Stanford duel, and I think another aspect that is potentially being overlooked going into it is the fact that we got right now sitting at number 2, Owen Lloyd. For redemption, he's going to need to battle the newcomer, because that was such a massive story with that, I think ridiculous disqualification from last year's ACCs. And one of those stories that managed to escape the swimming sphere. And like, I mean, seeing Twitter spam accounts like repost, like, you know, just like, oh, hey, here's a video. It's like, why am I looking at a tweet with 3 million views of Owen Lloyd at ACCs from like whatever fascinating things that are happening? I'm like, you don't talk about this stuff. And so I think that is such an interesting storyline to follow, you know, especially for stakes in the battle, in addition to just like winning an ACC title. Like if he's right there and you know, you have a battle for that. It's like, okay, you're going for your redemption. You won the title, but then lost it last year. Can you reclaim it and hang on to it? And I think that's going to be a cool aspect, as well as the fact that I think, you know, Cal having going into a dominant top seed like that, it's at the end of the meet, so it's not as much of like an opening statement to them, but just in terms of looking at the psych sheets, looking at the rankings going into it, it's showing that, you know, if they're chasing that ACC title, they've got some firepower to do it. And it also shows how great of you know, bringing him back is going to be for their end of the year hopes.
Absolutely. I'm looking at these rankings right now, and one thing that really surprises me, and maybe I've just been out of touch a little bit. Who the heck is Freddie Klein? He's fifth seed, 1448 for Cal at the Cal Stanford meet. He was out in 853. I've never heard his name before, but Cal's got 3 guys in the top 6 for this mile, which I did not expect to see.
He's a freshman, and I think that's his lifetime best. So he's coming in with some momentum.
All right, go Freddie. I mean, that is great to see, but also just looking at the depth, I think this is going to be great. You've got 10 guys who've already been under 15 minutes, with SMU's Jack Hoagland right at 15 minutes for 11 seed. But then I feel like the mile is a little tricky because not everyone swims it in season or like gets a really good crack at it. So looking at the 1,000 rankings, you've got 12 guys who have already been under 9 minutes this season, just in the 1,000. So just comparing those times, it's like, yeah, I think there's going to be some serious speed in this distance event. And between Cal and NC State, you've got 2 really deep and really great distance crews. So I am looking forward to this race, and yeah, just seeing the Owen Lloyd redemption arc. I got to see him do some power with the NC State distance group and under Coach Bernardino in December, and it would be so cool to see him win again this mile, but it will be really great to see just how he reacts to being at this meet again after the heartbreak we saw him go through last year.
Looking also at the 1,000 rankings, you know, talking about where Cal's sitting with that is also that every Lucas and Freddie Klein, Tyler Kopp at 2, 7, and 8. Those are all 1,000 splits from their miles against Stanford, which the fact that Lucas is within a second of the number 1 time with his 8:44.4 going out in his 1,000 is pretty nutty. Also, I went and looked because you mentioned that Freddie Klein is a freshman this year. That dual meet swim, 14:48, first time under 15 minutes, came into Cal with a lifetime best of 15:02. So doing work over there in the distance lanes, apparently.
Going right.
I thought Cal's distance program sucked. That's what the SwimSwam comment section tells me.
Seriously, something's going right. Maybe it's because Gabe Jett is training in the distance lane this year. I don't know.
You're probably right.
Who's to say?
Just his aura just elevates everyone.
Seriously, Sophie, any thoughts on the men's mile for this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be really exciting. It does feel like there's a lot still unsettled. You know, you clearly have the front runners, Lucas Henvo, Owen Lloyd sitting up there 1-2. You know, but like you said, people don't get a chance to swim the mile very often during the regular season, you know, maybe once or even twice. So it doesn't seem like a lot of this is necessarily settled in the same way you get to see people, race like a 50 or 100 free multiple times during the regular season. And, you've got Will Gallant sitting down there in 7th with a 14:49. He's back for NC State this year. He's an NCAA champion in this event. And so it'll be, he took last year off to train for Olympic trials. And so has been pretty quiet, I feel like, this season so far. But so it'll be really interesting to see what, he brings to the ACC championships after a year break. And now it looks incredibly different. And NC State has their work cut out for them to defend their title against Cal, who now is bringing clearly a pretty decent distance crew of their own to the meet. They are well known for final day antics, and they've only made themselves stronger now in the 1650 on the last day.
Final day antics. We gotta start saying that more, especially when referencing Cal. All right, I think that's good on ACCs. We're also cutting it close with time, but I'm gonna head into some final sink or swims. Let's keep these fairly short and rapid fire. So first sink or swim, sticking with the ACC, Cal men win their first ACC championship. Sink or swim? I'm going swim. I think the Cal men look great this year, and I think they have also started to adopt a little more mindset of swimming fast all year rather than picking and choosing their spots. The Cal men are known for quote unquote whiffing Pac-12s or, just not putting a huge emphasis on that meet. I think their first year in the conference, they will probably put a little more of an emphasis on this meet than some past Pac-12s. But I think their men's team is just that good that even if they don't go all in for this meet, I think they're going to come out on top. Sophie, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm swimming this as well. On paper, based on season times, they've got a pretty decent lead, and that doesn't include diving. We've been talking about distance used to be a weak spot for Cal. So to diving, they've fixed that too. They have people who score on the boards at NCAAs. So I feel like once you factor that in, and the fact that NC State, who would be, I think, the most likely team to challenge Cal, has had some pretty significant injuries this season, who, Arsenio Bustos and Aiden Hayes are out for this season. If NC State had them, maybe it would be a closer meet, but I think Cal will win.
And I'm going to swim it as well, just because I think they're looking
David?
really fast and really deep in a lot of events. And I think they're going to build and build and build just this massive points by the time they even get to their final day antics.
Yeah, can't argue with that. I mean, I hope it's a fun team race, but I think the Bears are going to roll for this one. Going to the SECs, sink or swim, Texas women win their first SEC championship. I gotta swim this one. I think Texas women have had a great season all year. They have been second in the NCAA for the past 2 or 3 years. And I don't see any SEC women's team having the depth to topple them, even this being their first year there. David?
I'm going to swim this as well. I was a little bit more on the fence for this one at first, because I was kind of, just like flipping through the top rankings on the women's in the SEC, seeing, and it was like, okay, I'd see, a cluster of Longhorns up the top, but then, and one event later, I'd see a cluster of Gators that also seemed like, are like pretty even mixes, chances to move. It seemed like I was leaning Texas. I went, okay, I'm going to check the relays, and that'll be Texas looks quite a bit stronger in the relays, and that was the final thing that really pushed it over the top for me to swim it for the Texas women.
Yeah, I agree. I'm swimming this as well. Maybe you can make the argument that because of the different ways that Florida and Texas have been approaching their seasons, there's more chance for the Florida women to move up. The Texas women have a bunch of top seeds, but I think that based on the way that they've swum this regular season, they've looked so strong. There's no reason to really expect them to kind of crater at this meet. They've kept improving in a nice trajectory, even as they've been swimming so fast. So I do think that the Texas women will win. I think it'll be a really interesting race between Florida and Tennessee for runner-up, but Texas, I think, is going to win.
Yeah. It's funny that because the UVA women have just like spammed relays so much that like they're unreal, and we see any other team compete against them and we're kind of like, what are they doing? But then you take UVA out of the mix and you're like, oh, right. Like these relays are fast. Like Texas women, for example, like that is a really strong, really deep team. So yeah, I think they're going to walk away with the championship after this one. Okay. This again, we could go into a lot of discussion about this one, but let's try to keep it brief. Sink or swim, will all three Dressel act by the end of the weekend? I'm swimming. I think those are hard records to break, and I think we have a lot of great candidates to break them, especially in the SEC, as we've discussed. But I think you got to do it at NCAAs. I think that people, I don't think they're getting touched. I think they might get close, but no records broken. All three are intact by the end of the weekend. Sophie?
It's a rare day, I feel like, when I get to bring more toxic optimism to the breakdown than Coleman. No, I'm sinking this, and I'll be specific about it. I think Jordan Crooks breaks the 50 freestyle record at SECs. I think if he's going to get this record, this is the meet to do it at. We've seen the long starts, the intensity in the pool during the 50 free at NCAAs. If this record is getting broken, it's getting broken at a conference championship. Crooks looked incredible in December at Short Course Worlds, 19.9 world record, breaking Caleb's record twice. I think he does it.
I'm apparently the tiebreaker, and I basically agree, even the way he phrased it with Coleman of swim, because I was very much on because for the exact reason there's so many candidates, but it's kind of an interesting dilemma in a lot of events, right? Where if you're good enough to be chasing these records, you'd be good enough to be chasing an NCAA title, which means you're going to be peaking for NCAA championships. I also agree with what Sophie said in terms of, I think for Jordan Crooks in particular, in that 50 free, SECs has been his best shot. He's gone 17 twice in 2 different years at SECs, gain time to NCAAs. I think it's because once you get that field so fast with all those waves, it's way harder to go that fast. Dressel, when he went 17.6, Ryan Held was 1.01 seconds behind him in an 18.6. He had so much clean water. And I think that, but one of the issues that Kirk's going to have is that now SECs is a little bit faster. And so they're just going to, that you're not going to have as much clean water, especially depending on what kind of game Liendo brings on there. And there's got Chris Giuliano potentially in the mix. Like it's just going to be getting faster, and that issue is just going to be compounded, especially because, I think a lot of people were ready to say 17.6 is gone after Short Course Worlds. I think Dressel's 50-yard swim was a much, much bigger focus for him, much higher quality swim for his senior year. NCAAs, barriers been chasing, blew through it compared to an ISL final in an Olympic, cycle. Not going to put as much of an emphasis on that. So I think the Dressel swims in that, because you're going to be comparing them, were softer than 17.6. That's a much bigger hurdle. I think that the most likely Dressel record to fall, I've said it for a bit now, is I think it's that 100 free, because now the swimmers going after it don't have to do prelims relays. And I think that's going to need to wait till NCAAs, because, Dressel, I think the first thing he said in the post-race interview after he went 39.9 was, I'm tired.
Yeah. No, it's a great point, Sophie. I love that you brought that up because I would agree that's the most likely to fall because Jordan has just looked on fire this season. I hope for it.
Same.
I want to see it, but I'm not betting for it this time around. All right, last sink or swim today is an over under. The Virginia women break 2.5 relay records at the ACC Championships. I am going over. I think their team is stacked. I think the Walsh sisters, it's both their last season of college swimming. They are not only wanting to be great at this meet, they want that 800 free relay record. After just missing it last year, this is the meet they're going to go for it at. Again, they didn't go for it at NCAA's last year. I don't think they will this year. I think they get the 800 free relay because their other pieces are also better than last year. Now, I think they get that record and then just kind of take your pick. I think they will break 2 other records of the 4 in this race because again, their top end, Walsh's, Claire Curzan, I mean, you've got Anna Moish and Maxine Parker on the sprint core. You've between those 5, honestly, it's like it's good. It's looking good. I think they get 3+. Sophie?
Yeah, I'll swim this one as well. I thought about thinking it to, create some controversy and some discussion, but I think once you actually start, breaking it down, they'll break 3. They're going for that 800 free relay record. I think they do it, in addition to putting Gretchen on there. Claire Curzan just went her first best time in that race in a long time at the Cavalier Invite, 141.9. I think they get that one. And then, like you said, it is kind of take your pick. I think if I had to bet, it would be the medleys. But they've looked so strong all season. They broke the 400 record US Open
Medley US
American. Yeah, at the Eddie Reese Invite. So clearly they're feeling good, feeling fast, and that hopefully will only continue into the championship season.
Yeah, just one quick thing. The combo of Curzan back, Alex Breast, Gretchen Fly. Take your pick on freestylers, honestly, right? And then they have Anna Moish or Maxine Parker on freestyles. It's like, that's really good. David,
I got to swim it as well. I think that, talking about the medley relays, right? That American record in the 400 medley relay, that when Gretchen did her ridiculous 200 medley relay butterfly split, they were super close to that NCAA record when they did that. I think those medleys are pretty safe bets to fall. And then you just add a third one, like you were saying, Coleman. I want, and I maybe am thinking it'll be that 800 free because they want it. If they miss that one, then I think there's also a decent shot that they can, maybe take a swing at a 200 free or 400 free relay. But if I had to pick a combination to get to 3, it'd be both medleys and the 8 free relay.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet, but it's also crazy that we're like, oh yeah, they're going to break 3 relay records because all of their relay records plus the 800 free relay are so incredible already that it is crazy to me that we can say with such confidence, yeah, no, they're going down. But hey, that's the UVA women. That's what they do. And that is our SEC ACC breakdown previews. The conference championships start next week. Hopefully you'll be well informed after this podcast to watch them, to spectate them. Head to SwimSwam for all the details. And hopefully we will have 1 or 2 more conference championship previews coming your way soon. Thanks so much for tuning in. We will see you next time.